Continuing to follow breaking news in the Middle East, U.S. military forces have rescued the missing airman who was shot down by Iranian forces Friday. That's according to President Trump, who made the announcement on Truth Social just after midnight Eastern, saying, "We got him, my fellow Americans, over the past several hours." The United States military pulled off one of the most daring search and rescue operations in U.S. history for one of our incredible crew member officers, who also happens to be a highly respected colonel and who I'm thrilled to let you know is now safe and sound. Trump adding, quote, "This brave warrior was behind enemy lines in the treacherous mountains of Iran, being hunted down by our enemies. The U.S. military sent dozens of aircraft armed with the most lethal weapons in the world to retrieve him. He sustained injuries, but he will be just fine." Again, the president's statement in part. This is video now from Friday of U.S. planes taking part in that search. The airman, who is a weapons officer, was reportedly armed with nothing more than a pistol while hiding in a mountain crevice as U.S. forces raced to find him before Iran did. And is now also learning the CIA played a role in this rescue by launching a deception campaign against Iran. The agency spread false accounts inside Iran that U.S. forces found the airman and were moving him out of the country. That narrative confused Iranians and bought the U.S. more time to locate the missing service member, which officials called the ultimate needle in a haystack. Let's bring in Inzamam Rashid, MS Now contributor, live in Dubai. And Inzamam, I know that we are just hours into this story. What else are you learning?
Well, Richard, the details are pretty sketchy, and the bulk of the information is coming directly from President Trump's Truth Social post, which I'll go through some of it for you, just so we get an understanding of exactly what the Commander-in-Chief has said in relation to this operation, which has been going on over the last couple of days now, ever since this F-15 fighter jet was shot down by the Iranians on Friday. Clearly, initially, there was the rescue operation of one of the crew members of that F-15 jet, that U.S. jet, and then it's taken a good few hours, more than 24 hours at least, to rescue the second crew member. So, firstly, the president starts off with three words, which I think all of America, but also many countries in this region, particularly in the Gulf, will have wanted to hear, and that was, "We got him," clearly indicating that they've rescued this serviceman from inside of Iran. He goes on to explain how the U.S. Have been monitoring this individual. He says that they knew the whereabouts of his location inside Iran. Trump claimed that he wasn't alone because the commander-in-chief, the secretary of war, fellow warfighters were all monitoring his location 24 hours a day, diligently planning for his rescue and his evacuation. I think that would indicate where he was. It was a question to get to him and evacuate him safely. That's exactly what the U.S. have been planning to do, and clearly successfully have done. This was an operation, as we understand, by air, on the ground. Special forces most likely would have been involved in this. We know that the CIA potentially played a role here as well. And the plan was to try and get this serviceman, and then get everyone out safe and sound. President Trump had also said that the man involved sustained injuries, but he'll be just fine, according to what the president has said. So, look, I think there'll be much relief, not only in the U.S. as everyone wakes up this morning, but particularly out here in the Gulf as well. And that's because, well, if this operation didn't take place and this serviceman was effectively captured by the Iranians, it could have been a devastating move in this war, because essentially you'd have the Iranians using this U.S. serviceman as a bargaining chip, using him as some sort of leverage to use him for negotiation tactics as well. That thankfully hasn't happened. There was also some unconfirmed reports that he may have actually gone on a bit of a hike away from where this plane was shot down. The terrain, the territory is pretty difficult and quite rocky and uneven, and so he would have had to walk for quite some time to get to a place where he could have sent some signals for some safety. I just want to very briefly, Richard, if I may, give you the response from the Iranians as well. Iran specifically claiming that they have actually shot down today 3 U.S. aircrafts during this operation had taken place. This is unconfirmed reports. This is what Iran state media is suggesting, but also the representative of the Iranian supreme leader. He said that the U.S. president sought to restore America's lost prestige after the destruction of his fighter jets, but in doing so, he also lost several aircraft, helicopters, and his forces. Iran suggesting that this C-130 jet, a refueling jet, which we saw helping to refuel some of the Black Hawks in that initial rescue operation, was shot down. But there is no confirmed reporting of that as of yet, and that's something that we will bring to you if we get it. But I think one thing is pretty clear. Iran has got military effectiveness still, Richard, in this region. They've still got it in this war, and they can use it if they want to. But the good news clearly is that this serviceman now has been rescued by U.S. military. He's out of any sort of danger inside enemy territory and is safe and sound, according to the president.
And Zaman Rashid with the very latest, this rare shooting down of a jet. I think the Associated Press saying the last time this happened 20 years ago. Inzamam Rashid with the very latest for us. Thank you. We also spoke to retired General Barry McCaffrey about this very issue, a 4-star general with the U.S. Army, earlier this morning about the stunning success of this mission.
Well, obviously, it's thoroughly good news. It's not just good news for his family and his unit, but also a reflection on the enormous capacity of the Air Force and Naval Air to recover downed flyers. We'll find out more about this in the coming weeks, and Julia did a great job in sort of breaking the story to us, and David put it in larger context, but these are not operations invented overnight. They have these capacities, they have a ton of high technology, they rehearse this all the time, the pilots individually are trained. And of course, you know, the kind of air crew that are flying F-15Es, a 1,500-mile-an-hour aircraft that goes into the targets at low level at night, has onboard defensive systems. These are extraordinarily well-trained men and women in both the Air Force and Naval Air. So it's good news, and it's not surprising to me that in some ways that it came out as it did. The video looked like mountainous terrain with very little cover. And we saw a video of the crash site. And so that presumably ruled out that the weapons officer had been killed and ridden his aircraft into the ground. But as somebody earlier commented, you know, at the altitude and speeds that these aircraft are going, high speed ejection, that pilot could have been, I suppose, 10 miles away from the crash site. So again, he was located. They do have encrypted communications. They did put together the package. And by the way, that was a frightfully dangerous operation. Just watching an air-to-air refueling of Black Hawk helicopters in an Air Force C-130 aircraft, it looked like our aircraft are only up at 4,000 or 5,000 feet, and you could see video of individual Iranian soldiers firing at them with small arms and machine guns. And you can hit an aircraft at 5,000 feet with a heavy machine gun. And now we're also hearing intimations that there was a ground operation of special operations people, probably Air Force. The Air Force PJs, they're called, are your average super heroic people. And they're heavily armed, and they got in on the ground. So it was an interdiction to prevent the Iranians from scooping them up and then getting the whole force out. It'll be quite a tale that we'll hear in the coming days.
All right, our thanks to General McCaffrey for joining us a little bit earlier with his analysis, again, on that good news of the recovery of the second airman of that F-15 that was shot down Friday. We're going to have much more on the story.
Hey, let's order in tonight.
Ooh.
What should we get?
Yeah, anything. You know I'm easy.
What? the most violent and thuggish regime on earth would be free to carry out their campaigns of terror, coercion, conquest, and mass murder from behind a nuclear shield. I will never let that happen, and neither should any of our past presidents. This situation has been going on for 47 years and should have been handled long before I arrived in office. Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will resume the flowing, and the gas prices will rapidly come back down. Stock prices will rapidly go back up. I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
So, Willie, I think the national reaction to a lot of what the president said last night will be negative across other media outlets, and it may be quite negative from the friends that we have around the table today, and very smart people, smarter than me, that are sitting around the table. I do want to go through a few things because I often fact-check Donald Trump, and it's usually fact-checking him in a way that is quite negative. But in this case, I'm going to fact-check a couple things that are the established belief of the foreign policy establishment in Washington, D.C. Number one, he said a nuclear Iran is intolerable. I think most foreign policy experts in Washington, D.C. believe that. It is intolerable. He said they have been building this strength for 47 years. This should have been taken care of much earlier. That is also a belief. I've had several intel officers who did not like how the war began. Some of America's greatest experts on Iran through the decades telling me, I don't like how this war began. I don't like the lack of planning, but at the same time, presidents have been kicking the can down the road. If we didn't go in now, we were eventually going to have to go in. So he's correct there. This should have been taken care of earlier, 47 years earlier. The president said most of our military objectives have been met, will be met over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Again, whether you're talking to military or intel officials, they will tell you, yes, that is also true. And again, we have to separate military objectives with political objectives. Those are two radically different things. But on the military side of the ledger, the president may be correct. On the political side of the ledger, of course, serious problems with the Straits. I suspect we may, the Wall Street Journal, and I mean, it is remarkable. We say it all the time. It is remarkable, though, the work the Wall Street Journal is doing. They seem to lap their competition every morning. And this morning, they have stories about the islands that control the flow of oil, not just Karg, but the others throughout the Straits. I suspect that may be, those islands may be targets directly or indirectly. And maybe that's why the buildup is going. I just noted the timing of the Wall Street Journal article. But anyway, Willie, so those are on the plus side of the fact check. On the other side, the president said the hard work's been done and things are going to get easier from this point on. I don't think that's the case at all. I think this has continued to be a difficult situation, which is one of the reasons why the UAE, the Saudis, a lot of our other allies don't want the president to cut and run. They want him to stay there another 2, 3, 4 weeks and try to get as much of the job done as possible. And then the president said that the Straits were going to open up naturally. No, they're not. They're not going to open up naturally. We're either going to have to get a deal with the Iranians or we're going to have to figure out a way to force those straits open. The European allies are incapable of doing that. Our allies in the region are incapable of doing that. The only force that can do that is the United States military, and we either do it directly or we do it hopefully through negotiations. But that's my rundown of the speech. I'm curious what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there. I mean, obviously, I think most people agree with you that a nuclear Iran is intolerable. It's just unclear in this latest version of the war how that has been debilitated, how the nuclear program has been debilitated. If it wasn't already obliterated, to use the president's term, last June, what has changed through this operation over the last month or so? I think we can officially abandon hearing the 2 to 3 week timeline, since he says it every day, which means that timeline hasn't changed and has been saying it for a long time. So don't put much stock in that. And obviously, like you said, opening the straits will open naturally when we leave. That's not true. The short-term increase in gas prices here at home, very dismissive of what people are living through and going through right now at $4 a gallon.
We'll go through arguments at the Supreme Court, where President Trump attended the hearing surrounding his bid to end birthright citizenship.
Fortunately for Trump, he's not a great legal scholar, so he probably thought a Supreme Court argument was going to be like this.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
When actually it was more like this.
Is the application of that general rule limited only to the situations that they had in mind when they adopted the general rule? Or do we say they adopted a general rule, they meant for that to apply to later applications that might come up?
Okay, there is no way Donald Trump was still awake at that point.
That's the Daily Show's take last night. Supreme Court justices appeared skeptical of the White House argument against birthright citizenship at yesterday's hearing. The case hinges on the meaning of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which has been understood to give U.S. citizenship to people born on American soil. The Trump administration is challenging that interpretation when the president signed an executive order limiting to whom citizenship applies. Solicitor General John Sauer, who you heard there, faced tough questions from both liberal and conservative justices. He argued the amendment was written specifically with the children of former enslaved people in mind, and that what he called birth tourism was creating a massive number of children with citizenship but no real ties to the United States. Here are some of the arguments from yesterday's hearing.
You say that the purpose of the 14th Amendment was to put all slaves on equal footing, newly freed slaves on equal footing, and so they would be citizens. But that's not textual.
8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution. I get the point, thinking about, gee, European countries don't have this, or most other countries, many other countries in the world don't have this. Doesn't that, I guess I'm not seeing the relevance as a legal, constitutional, interpretive matter.
How are we determining when or whether a newborn child is a citizen of the United States under your rule? I'm just talking about the particulars, because now you say your rule turns on whether the person intended to stay in the United States. And I think Justice Barrett brought this up. So are we bringing pregnant women in for depositions? What are we doing to figure this out?
Do you think Native Americans today are birthright citizens under your test and under your friend's test?
I think so. I mean, obviously they've been granted citizenship by statute.
Put aside the statute. Do you think they're birthright citizens?
No, I think the clear understanding that everybody agrees in the congressional debates is that the children of tribal Indians are not birthright citizens.
I understand that's what they said, but your test is the domicile of the parents, and that would be the test you'd have us apply today, right?
Yes, yes. So if a tribal Indian, for example, gives up allegiance to...
Born today, birthright citizens.
I think so on our test, yeah. If they're lawfully domiciled here.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I have to think that through, but that's my reaction.
I'll take the yes.
Justice Gorsuch there. Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney, former senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg, and president of Voto Latino Foundation, Maria Teresa Kumar. Good morning to you both. So, Chuck, the consensus from legal scholars seems to be that it was a tough day for the Solicitor General because a lot of what we heard yesterday, critical and skeptical of the argument, did come from conservative justices. We'll point out many of them appointed by Donald J. Trump, who was sitting in the front row for at least half of the hearing or so. What were your takeaways yesterday?
Yeah, Willie, I think the Solicitor General had a tough day in court. He got good questions from the so-called liberals and the so-called conservative justices. By the way, the woman who represented those challenging the executive order also got good and tough questions from both sides of the court. I like the argument. I think they both did well. I think she had the stronger position. I think the Solicitor General had much more to defend. Sometimes it's the hand you're dealt. But I think that I agree with you, Willie. It seemed like the court was skeptical of the administration's position. And I hate predicting votes, and I won't predict votes, except to say that I think the executive order will be found to be either unconstitutional or in violation of a 1952 statute that mirrored the language of the 14th Amendment.
So, Chuck, I'm curious your reaction when you heard the exchange between the solicitor.
Citizenship.
Same Constitution.
Yeah, I heard what you had to say at the beginning of the show, Joe, and I agree with you. I think it's an important reminder to Americans about who we are and where we come from and the rules that bind us all. Yeah, the world has changed and the world will continue to change, but there are certain basic bedrock principles that apply. The 14th Amendment was enacted in 1868. It's not a new thing. It was enacted specifically, Joe, to overturn a repulsive Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott, an 1857 decision that held that blacks never were, never could be citizens of the United States. Our common understanding of what the 14th Amendment is and does has really been unchanged. It has been challenged from time to time, but our common understanding has been changed. And I think that's the lesson of what Chief Justice Roberts was saying. Maybe new facts, but it's the same Constitution. And as a nation, we are knit together by a set of common rules.
Maria Teresa, we should note that the president, after leaving the Supreme Court, put up an angry post on Truth Social blasting birthright citizenship again. So perhaps that's a clue as to how he felt things went yesterday. But give us some of your takeaways as you listen to these exchanges with the justices.
Well, I think one of the things that for this justice is what I think refreshing is that we're actually starting to see a separation of government. I think a lot of folks were very skeptical that the judges would go, the Supreme Court would actually abide by institutions and rules of law, and they were very concerned that they were going to be weighted very much by the sway of this president, and we have not seen that, Willie. I've just, the fact that they stopped the National Guard from going into Chicago, the fact that they stopped tariffs and saying, no, that's a legislative congressional issue, and now basically contesting, saying you really have no legs to stand on birthright citizenship is fundamental, because I think that we're seeing is a Supreme Court that is really reflecting the values of our institutions. And I know oftentimes, Joe and Willie, we've had these conversations of like, will the Supreme Court have the separation of powers? And we are seeing just that.
Still ahead on Morning Joe, what Democratic Congresswoman and Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi is saying about her history-making time in Congress, the upcoming midterms, and much more. MS Now's Ali Vitale is standing by on the heels of that exclusive sit-down interview. You're watching Morning Joe, and only female Speaker of the House with her career in Congress spanning nearly 4 decades. At 86 years old, she's become one of the most recognizable and powerful figures in American politics, shepherding passage of a number of landmark bills, from the Affordable Care Act to the American Rescue Plan, and becoming a favorite target of Republicans, including President Trump. Yesterday, MS Now senior Capitol Hill reporter and the host of Way Too Early, Ali Vitale, was in attendance as Pelosi's career was celebrated in her home state of Maryland. And in an MS Now exclusive, the former speaker opened up for a wide-ranging interview, speaking on everything from the state of Congress to patching up her rift with President Biden and the upcoming midterm elections. And Ali Vitale joins us now with more on her interview. Ali.
Yeah, Mika, this was an absolutely fascinating day to spend with the Speaker Emerita. And when it comes to President Biden, as you mentioned, the two, of course, had a long shared, a close relationship until on this very program in 2024, Pelosi made some comments that then became an inflection point in Biden ultimately dropping his reelection bid and straining their relationship in the process. I asked about where things stand now.
I wonder if you factor in the way that Biden's campaign ended when you think about your own legacy. I think that many people credit you or blame you for the way that that campaign ended.
Well, I don't know. How can I say this in a nice way? The Biden administration accomplished great things. People compared him to LBJ in terms of the amount of and the quality and quantity of accomplishments. Only thing I asked the president to do were two things. I get more credit or blame than I deserve, and that is that I wanted him to have other posters at the table than just listening to one, and B, I wanted him to assure the public that he could serve the term. They didn't agree with that, and so he then decided to step aside. It was his decision. Rather than talking about that, I'd rather talk about Kamala Harris. She was just, it happened so fast. She ran a great campaign. She turned out so many more people than who would have voted. I think she doesn't deserve enough credit for what the outcome of the election in terms of, we would have lost probably 14 seats in that election if she had not been the candidate.
Have you and Biden spoken?
Yes, we have.
Did he call you when you retired?
It'll be up to him to tell people when we spoke.
And you guys know me well. Of course, that prompted me asking some questions of the Biden orbit. And a Biden spokesperson actually told me that Pelosi and Biden have recently gotten lunch, so potentially a thawing to that chilly relationship because of what happened in 2024. I also thought it was fascinating to hear the way that she talked about Kamala Harris. We also spoke in the context of women and the presidency, people like Hillary Clinton vying for that top office and falling short. Pelosi speaking to the chatter that I've heard from some in the Democratic Party about them not being able to put a woman forward as the nominee again. And I thought it was fascinating the way that she said that wasn't fair, but also said that she thought the country would be more ready for a female president before a female speaker. Of course, she has broken what she called the marble ceiling, as the glass ceiling still remains intact.
Ali, can you tell us a little bit about what the former speaker had to say about the state of Congress right now?
Yeah.
She said the current speaker has really committed a betrayal against the institution, I believe, in your interview. Just tell us a little bit about whether she thinks it can be fixed.
Yeah, these were some strong words from the former speaker as she looks at one of her successors in that top role in Congress, because this is a question we grapple with a lot on this show, which is Congress broken? It's especially worth asking amid yet another government shutdown. And I'll play for you what the Speaker Emerita told me and the way that she focused on this Republican-led Congress when it comes to answering that question.
It does feel like members on both sides agree that the building and the institution is broken right now. And I wonder if you agree with that assessment.
Well, I think the Republicans have broken it on their side. But I think that the members of Congress who go there know why they're there. This is Article 1, the legislative branch, and we have a responsibility to the people. The Republicans have decided to fold to the president. That they have abolished the Congress, actually. But I don't think people think that the Congress is irretrievable.
As a former speaker, I wonder what you make of the way that Speaker Johnson has been so keen to seemingly farm out power that should be his, that should be Congress's, to the White House.
What the Speaker is doing is really a betrayal of the Congress of the United States. The Constitution is clear about what our role is, and to surrender it to the executive branch, even if they were to surrender it to the Senate, you would say that's wrong, but it's at least within Article 1, the legislative branch.
That's powerful reporting. Ali, I wonder if you had any sense whether she could talk about how the Democrats are going to fix this if they are able to win back Congress in the midterms, and what that pathway actually should look like.
Well, look, she told me that she was fully confident that House Democrats were going to retake the lower chamber. Where she said her confidence was waning was, in fact, around security concerns around the midterm elections, because I asked her about the ways that the Trump administration is leaving open the possibility, for example, of placing ICE at polling places, of the ways that they are trying to push forward legislation through the SAVE Act, as they call it, that would hamper people's ability to access their right to vote. Of course, the Supreme Court is also entertaining decisions that could impact mail-in balloting. And I asked her, does she have concerns around the midterm elections given that? And she said that she does have concerns, but that there is a plan in place, talking with state legislatures and state election boards, trying to make sure that they know what they should be doing as Election Day gets ever closer. But again, her confidence is clear when it comes to House Democrats' ability to retake control of Congress. And then, of course, that begged other questions. We talked, for example, about the role that impeachment might play. Pelosi herself, having led the impeachment charge against Trump the last time during his first term, she told me she has no regrets about the way that they did that. She said that the only person responsible for Trump being impeached is Trump. But at the same time, I pressed her on the fact that Democrats don't willingly speak about the I word. And she says that that's because it's not something that you campaign on, in her mind. It's something that you build a case on methodically once you get gavel power. And I think it's clear that that's going to be part and parcel to what a Democratic majority would bring back to Congress if that happens in November.